Hi, this is FolaFayo, the Perception Shaper, and this is the second episode in the Thrive at Home series. On the last episode, I shared my transition into the home space from the corporate space, and I also talked about 3 myths that many could find as, holdbacks to coming into the home space or even making the best of the home space while they are there. And I'm sure that if you've not watched it and you go back to watching it at this time, you would find something that would help you to do much better in your space. Now, today we're going to be talking about seasons. And seasons is something that I would say I have discovered. If you're aware of and if you leverage and maximize, you will make the best of any space you find yourself in. Now, for me, when I was moving into the home space, the season that I would say I was in was a place where I was growing so much. I wanted to do so much more, but I knew that being able to merge all those things of working in the bank, having little kids, less than 7, and having my husband out of town would have been a bit challenging for me. But then for you, the question is, what was the reason that you found yourself in the home space? Did you decide to? Was it that your office, retired you? Was it that your office just, moved you out of the system for some reason or the other? It might not be something that could have been permanent, could have been something temporary, but you need to ask yourself, what season am I in? And then for some other people, it could be medical. Medical because they weren't feeling fine, medical because they also wanted to attend to someone who wasn't feeling well in their family, or because they were expecting a baby and it was time for them to go have that baby and be there for the baby for about 3 months, 6 months. In fact, a year in some companies, they could give you that length of time. But what season are you in? What season determined the fact that you had to be in the home space? Now, the very first live session that we had on the Thrive at Home concept and all of that, one of the participants asked this question and she said, how do you know when your seasons have changed? And over time, thinking through it, I have realized that quite a number of things could determine when your season has changed. So, for example, I know that location is one thing that could point to a season changing. If you're someone who has always lived close to work and you now bought a home that was far from work, your season has changed because you're probably getting home later, waking up earlier, and a lot of dynamics will come into the mix, determining some other things for you than you expect it to be. For some other people, it might not even just be work home proximity. It might be that you actually relocated, you changed cities, or you moved from country to country. And I would tell you that that has been the case for us. I have had a lot of changing seasons in my life because of the work of my husband. We've actually lived in some amazing cities in the world. So I know what it is for one to say, boxing your things and moving to another city, settling into a new culture with your family, and trying to understand what's going on in that space. So seasons could change when your locations change. Now, another thing that could determine your season changing will be the resources. So if you're someone who didn't used to make a lot of money before, and then all of a sudden you hit a jackpot, or you're making much more than you used to before, then you're in a new season because there are some things you couldn't afford to do before, and now you can do them. Remember in the last session, we talked about outsourcing and delegating some of the house chores. So in that season where you're making much more, you could actually have a driver, you could hire a cook that makes even house chores easier for you. That has changed your season because you have much more funding or finance at that time. Now, the reverse could also be the case. If you're earning less than you used to earn before, then your season has also changed because you're now cutting down on some things that you used to do before, or the time you used to spend on some things will now be longer because you don't really have the capacity to cover that with finances anymore. So when resources change, there's a plus or there's a minus, then that means that your season has also changed. Now, another thing that points to a season changing would be the people in your life. So if you have an increase or a decrease in the number of people in your life or the type of people in your life, then your season has changed. So let's talk about the type of people. If you're someone who is in an organization where you have a head of department that you really like, and the person kind of connects with you well, understands your work and things like that, you're in a particular season. If there's a reshuffling in the system, and a new boss is brought into your department, someone that from afar you could not even stand because you didn't understand this person, and maybe you are always at loggerheads with this person, your season has changed because you are now in the learning curve, a new one, trying to know who this person is and, show the person that you're good at your work. In fact, when I think about it, the learning curves I had working in the bank was quite a number because change of department heads a number of times in my own team, and that also determined how I was showing up at work and what I was trying to prove over and over. So would you say that the kinds of people in your space has changed because that points to your season? Now, another thing that could affect the people part of season changing is in the number. So if you're someone who for a good part, you've been married and you don't have a baby yet, when you have your first baby and then the second baby comes, your season has changed because your family size is increasing, is getting bigger, right? So your season is changing because you're thinking more about the kids, their age, their attention. And here's another thing I always say when it comes to seasons changing with family size and all. The person who has kids that are, say less than 5 is in a different season from someone who has teenage kids. Yes, that's another thing you need to factor in because you're looking out for some different things in your life when your kids are teenagers. So the type of people in your space, the number of people in your space could determine if your season has changed. Now, for someone who is in a home space, if you came into the home space having a nanny and a help, and then all of a sudden, both of them went home to see their families and they don't come back, your season has changed because you now have to think about how you're going to work around the routine and the dynamics of the family, not having those extra hands supporting you anymore. Now, the last thing that could also determine if your season has changed would be your focus. So let's say you came into the home space. Like for me, when I came into the home space, I just wanted to do more and I wanted to have that opportunity to grow myself and express myself. Now, if getting into the home space, I realized that I would rather focus my time helping my children to grow, supporting them in their own areas of passion and areas of strength. Then my season has changed because now I'm no longer focusing on my own personal things. I'm focusing on their things. So when your focus has changed, even if you're in the home space, your season has changed. Now, why am I bringing up seasons as a focus point today or in this series? Because your seasons should determine the kind of priorities you have, the kind of activities you're engaging in, and the kind of choices you're making. What happens with a lot of us is that when our seasons change, because we are not aware of it, we have the same expectations we have of ourselves in a previous season coming into another season. And usually that could lead to some form of discontentment or even frustration. And you could actually be carrying out this frustration on your children because you are not even aware that that change has happened. So for me, what I always encourage is to say that when your season changes, you need to sit down and have a reflective moment where you say, what is going to be my focus in this time? What am I going to dedicate more time to? What am I going to take time from? What am I going to spend more money on? Because those things will determine the commitment you have in different areas and will also determine your sense of fulfillment and the kind of joy you will have. So seasons is a very critical thing in being able to thrive in the home space. Of course, thrive in life generally, but in the home space in particular, you need to understand the season that you're in, the season that your family is in, and you want to build a lot of plans around that understanding in agreement with your husband, your wife, or the kids if they're at the point where they can contribute to the conversation. So I'm hoping that with the, tips that I've shared today on seasons, you would take time to look into how you can look into new ideas in being able to thrive in the home space. It's been a pleasure sharing another, idea with you today and quite a number of tips on thriving in the home space. See you on the next and probably the last episode. God bless.